Police officers who have arrested other police officers. What's the story? This was during my time as a United States Marine Corps MP. Never arrested another police officer during my other gigs. Got a phone call from the guy's wife saying he was drunk and refusing to leave the house. Knocked on the front door, but found him crying on the porch about his wife leaving him because she wasn't happy anymore. She walked by the porch and motioned for me to come inside through the glass door. She proceeded to show me the red marks on her throat, the hole in the door that he punched through beside her head, and some other evidence that doesn't need to be disclosed. After asking him to come inside and get dressed, he refused to leave with me. I wasn't going to handcuff him in front of his kid, but he decided to take that moment to run from me. He was faster and got away for about 5 minutes before I found him walking through a playground a couple building over. Caught up to him. He punched me, but was taken into custody after a slight use of force. On the way to the station he tried to kick out a window in my cruiser and told me I was ruining his life. He ended up getting charged with about 7 different charges and was kicked out of the Marines. On his way out he lied to NSYS and got an investigation opened on me for rape. Investigation was completed thoroughly and all charges against me were marked as unsubstantiated, but the charges still showed up after I got out and went through a background check for my security clearance. 10/10 would do again. My slight inconvenience was totally worth it for him to go down for domestic assault charges. Edit for clarification, the rape charges that he falsified were by him stating that he, quote unquote, heard Greg Stang raped a girl at the Marine Corps ball. Due to a law passed in Ike 2013, all military sexual assault allegations have to be investigated by a Title 18 law enforcement agency outside federal agency. NSYS was the one that took my case and subsequently cleared me. Charges are still found on a background check, even though I was cleared 100%. My dad was the arresting officer of an undercover narcotics detective for the murder of 2 fellow officers. From what I remember, the 2 officers and a technician caught him by surprise while he was stealing from an evidence room. He shot the 2 officers first and his firearm jammed, so the technician escaped. Detective got life in prison and died there. I actually have had to arrest 3 separate members of the justice system this year. First, a practicing lawyer and former judge who had been utilizing his position to coerce threats from defendants. He utilized this leverage even after he was not a judge anymore. Investigation by 601 revealed he had about a dozen victims, so a warrant for his arrest was made, which I executed. Arresting a guy you used to put defendants in front of is a very odd feeling. He weaseled out of prison time and got it all suspended and put on a direct supervision probation program. Absolute horse crap. I've seen guys do way less get way more time, but it's not really a secret that money has a habit of tipping the scales of justice. Next was a prison guard whom strangled his girlfriend, then stalked her relentlessly. I actually arrested him twice because after he posted bail on the first one he was spotted lurking outside her home only 45 minutes after being released. He's currently in on felony assault, strangulation of a household member, and felony violation of a protection order. He's still in my jail awaiting trial with a bail that has been substantially increased. I'm anticipating prison time for him, but only time will tell. Third was a city police officer. I'm a county deputy sheriff because we received a call from a 6-year-old that his dad was in the garage doing drugs and wouldn't come out. Showed up to find 4 very young kids running around unsupervised. It was a city police officer smoking meth that he had confiscated during a traffic stop and not reported or turned into evidence. 601 took the case from us due to potential conflict of interest and have placed him in another county's jail, and I haven't heard any more about it. Hope he does time too. What kinda asshole leaves his little kids totally alone and unsupervised while they smoke meth? Especially when said person is a freaking cop. Unforgivable in my opinion. But yeah, 2020 has been a very strange year for me. Not me, but my dad, who was a cop. He was still working as a full-time cop before switching full-time to firefighting and made a traffic stop around 11 at night back in the mid-80s. Nicer car, speeding well over the speed limit, so my dad initiates a stop. Before he is out of his cruiser, the driver has what looks like a badge hanging out of the window. My dad walks up, does the usual song and dance, and the driver said, "You obviously can't freaking see who I am." My dad says, "Yes, Lieutenant Colonel, I do, and right now I'm conducting a traffic stop." Turns out the driver was a LT Colonel in the Ohio State Highway Patrol, which is pretty high up in their rank structure. My dad again asks him for license and insurance, and the guy goes off, threatening to call Pages, as in Pages Sellers, who was governor at the time, and threatening his job, that he was just trying to get back to Columbus after an engagement and so on. Eventually he calls for backup and has another officer there to witness what was going on. Eventually my dad writes him a ticket, and while still screaming, Mr. Pullingrank drives away. The next shift my dad gets called in by his assistant chief and is asked about the stop, and apparently the colonel of OSHP was calling him about it. In the end they had to bring in the other officer to write a statement of what went on, and in the end nothing came of it, except the ticket wasn't contested and paid. Probationary officer goes on a blind double date with his roommate. Been at the racetrack drinking, so they take the train to downtown. Everyone is pretty drunk, him in particular. Maybe to entertain or show off for his date, he is acting goofy. As everyone is getting off the train, he sees some guy bent over tying his shoes. Rocket scientist decides to leapfrog over the guy, only neither of them have much balance. Probationary cop basically jumps over on the guy and drives his face straight into the pavement because he is too drunk and the guy wasn't expecting it. Everyone jumps up and he starts trying to defuse the situation he just caused. Turns out the guy is a 17-year-old kid heading down to spend the weekend with his grandparents and has 2 broken teeth and a broken nose. The drunk cop starts saying stuff like, "It's okay, it will be fine, I'm a cop, it's all good." When he realizes the crowd isn't going to let him just walk away, he foot bails and tries to run off. A few guys chase him down and grab him. Cops get called and detain him. I was the on-call detective who was called out at 22:30 to handle the case. He refused to answer any questions and was booked in for felony battery based on the extent of injuries and age of victim. He never made it off probation and resigned. Ex-sheriff's deputy here. One night on shift I had the great misfortune to overhear on the radio that a small local chief of police, the whole department was only 3 people, was not answering a radio call. So my shift partner goes out to the call that they were trying to get him to go to, and I make my way to try and locate this chief of police. On my way to the police station thinking maybe he's just asleep on the couch, I see his squad car pulled off onto the side of the road, lights going. In that moment my heart sank. My first thought was, oh no, this dude just got killed on a traffic stop. As I'm walking up to the car in a hurry, I noticed that he slumped over. I reached into the open driver's window and grabbed his shoulder to try and put my fingers against his neck to feel if he has a pulse or if his skin is still warm, and generally check to see if he is in fact still alive. As I'm doing this, I notice a distinct and strong odor of alcohol as the chief of police wakes up, looks at me, puts the car in drive and pulls away. About that time another deputy pulls up behind my car and I put out my radio that the chief is driving off. The other deputy, forgetting that we all use a shared frequency, then comes over the radio and says, hey, he should be easy to follow, his lights are on. The lights go off. Fast forward to several hours later, command staff is out at the police department, seizing the weapons and evidence that's stored within the department. This chief of police shows up with the mayor of the small town and submits himself to a breathalyzer. He barely passes. Fun fact, district attorneys do not like prosecuting chiefs of police, especially when politics are starting to get involved. Unrelated to that, I was let go about 2 weeks later for calling a suspect an asshole. Unprofessional conduct. Former police officer and correctional officer here. I never actually arrested a fellow cop myself. However, my field training officer was arrested and fired from my former PD twice for drunk and disorderly. Before I worked there, he got his job back twice through union arbitration and, to his credit, gave up drinking when I was working at the jail. We had a cop who was put into protective custody / suicide watch after being arrested for stalking a woman he met on a call. He got obsessed with her and kept bothering her after the fact, and, after she reported him, he made threats against her. A fellow co at my jail was arrested for producing and distributing child pornography. He got girls as young as 9 to send him nude photos, which he distributed on the dark web. He's doing 25 years in prison minimum. He won't be eligible for parole for another 15 years or so. We had 7 officers at the jail beat a disabled inmate and then lie about it on their reports. The shift commander then tried to erase the video. All were fired and arrested, but were later acquitted of all charges. Sad thing was, they were all guilty as heck. That's it for now. Thank you for watching the video. Leave your comments below. See you soon.